Hello. Currently, we are looking at Khan Yunis, southern side of Gaza Strip. We're focusing on this area today due to the differences and changes of the landscape going from December into February. The amount of bombing, the amount of shelling, dozing, tank treading, and just utter destruction has leveled a huge portion of Khan Yunis completely unstable. There's at least 40% has been peeled back. Let's take a look. Is this right here? This is going back from December 1st, 2023 to February 25th, 2024. Now, some of the images they might have like this obscured by clouds, so we'll just uncheck those since they're not going to give us any data that we would need. Move it over a little bit. Is a huge portion of Han Yunis that is being allowed to be pulverized, deteriorate. People are fleeing from Khan Yunis south to Rafah, when Rafah is already filled. An insane amount of people that are in Rafah right now. Rafah had a population before everybody was sent south. If you don't go south, they're telling all the civilians. The language is very careful. All the civilians leave, evacuate. Those that don't evacuate must no longer be a civilian. It's happening again with Khan Yunis. People are being forced to move south, even though there is nothing there for them, because Rafah had a population of only 275,000 people. Now, within a few short weeks, it's grown to a refugee population of 1.5 million people. Israel's ground invasion still has not started, but that is not to say they had not been bombing areas and softening up targets, so to speak, throughout Rafah. Mostly people waiting for aid, waiting to get food. Are mass casualty events right now. People being fired upon while they're trying to get something to eat after however long they probably have gone while being sick, cold, and waiting outside some more, and there's only outside. It doesn't change for these people. 1.5 million people living in tent city, worried about the next Israeli aggression, their next invasion, even though that globally it took 30,000 people dead, 30,000 Palestinians dead, and an invasion of a high concentrated civilian region to get not even just the United States to say the word ceasefire in a speech by the president. It's received a lot more support globally, more than I thought it would. But not saying that we're on the right side of this story because it's still unfolding. We do not know the answers. We do know that with the Pompeo doctrine, Israel felt a lot more comfortable in the amount of resettlement and colonization because Emma Vigeland said it best on the Majority Report, is there is no leftist colonist settler. There isn't. You can get to the point where, okay, I believe Israel has a right to defend itself. They do. They have a right to turn off water to a country, sewage services, everything, electricity. They have a right to defend themselves. To what end, though? If they do go ahead, which I do believe they will go ahead with this ground invasion of Rafah, regardless if they are being, regardless if they've had their credit rating downgraded, their economy was based on Palestinian work. Without Palestinian slaves, how else will their economy survive? Will they go Indian? That's too much speculation. You know that the economy of Israel has felt an enormous upheaval due to the amount of money that is going towards the same weapons that they export abroad. Is Palestine just target practice for their weapons? I don't hear any legitimate reason to send high precision missiles and rockets and tank shells into a home of 60 people or so. I only ever heard of Russia doing similar tactics. It's people trying to survive, trying to keep warm. The difference is, even with 1.5 million people surrounding each other, they're not going to feel warm because they're all outside. And it's cold, it's wet, it rains. There is no goal or ultimate solution. People that believe that Israel had goals or solutions, they're not going to have solutions when it comes to displacement and the massacre of over 1 million people. This is still happening. There's over 1 million people that are completely malnourished. They have no food, no drinkable water. The only water that they have is completely contaminated and will make all the children sick. While the adults might take time, the children will become malnourished, malformed. It doesn't take long with this kind of water that they're wading in, that they're dipping jerry cans into just below their feet, where the water meets the street, where the street meets the sewer. And that's the water that they're using. There's no water. There's no trucks. Trucks are not a replacement for food. Especially whenever they're being stopped by so many posts. Every time that the truck's held up for a day, trucks are held up for a day, trucks are held up for a day, along baking in the sun until those products are no longer edible, are no longer okay to serve, even though that people are eating animal feed, which increases the cost of animal feed, pricing out those with animals. It's in every direction that you could possibly go, you can find suffering. find stories. You can find stories of survival, but it's never 100%. Even the kids interviewed, it's trauma of war, and the entire world has been saying for years now, this isn't a war. Well, the amount of tanks they have in Gaza now, the amount of weapons that they're laying down, is this an actual war? Or is this just a demonstration of power, a weapons show? Because as it stands, Rafah is being bombed, dozens of people being killed over the last few days. Israel knows there's over 1.5 million people in a settlement city camp that was originally housing 275,000 people, now 1.5 million people. It is very alarming. Just as alarming as I've been saying this for weeks. Israel is not going to stop. They have no reason to stop. And if they destroy Hamas and they destroy their threats, will they still need the Iron Dome? Is this just a way for them to hopefully shake the need for an Iron Dome? Is that their ultimate goal? Because if each rocket that the Iron Dome fires is $6 million USD, and on October 7th, Hamas fired over, I want to say it was 5,000 rockets. That's $30 billion. You turn around and buy Iron Dome intercept munitions. Is this a scam? It sounds like a scam. Like, we'll give you all this money plus interest. You turn around and you buy weapons from us. It's all one big joke. Real dramatic images that are coming out of Gaza that we see here from satellite. We see the smoke cloud here as a possible strike. Turn off all the slides that have cloud obstruction. Push play. It is haunting. The amount of homes that have been crushed and leveled and bulldozed away, with over 7,000 people in Gaza missing. Do you think Israel is looking in the rubble for survivors or bodies or remains? 7,000 people missing, I don't think they are. I don't think bulldozers hesitate. I don't think the tanks with a dozer attachment hesitate. They don't hesitate to fire. It's just easier. 30,001 Palestinians have been killed, with 70% of that number made up of children and women. It's abominable. There's no war on women and children of Gaza. It's a genocide. It is a massacre. An endless war that, even if they invade Gaza, it won't end in invade in Rafah. It won't end in Rafah. If these refugees end up spilling over the border into Egypt, Israel will invade Egypt for these Palestinians. Well, you won't see anybody taking in any Palestinians because they know that Israel will look at you as a harbor of terrorists, fugitives. It's not unlike that they would attack that country, but just being designated a supporter of terrorism might not be enough, seeing that Israel has been committing acts of terrorism. Doesn't make anything right. Simply that Israel has a right to defend itself with the tip of the spear. But what's going on now isn't just military operations on the ground. Children are being arrested brutally. What are their crimes? Why are there so many children arrested? Why are there over 500 children arrested? Throwing rocks at the soldiers? Yeah. Kind of what you do to a 40, you throw rocks at them. You're a kid. You're too afraid that they're going to be grenades. One of them is going to call off guard. For the reason I haven't heard of any children killing anybody in this entire war. I haven't heard of a single child or woman that has killed anyone since the beginning of this war. Since October 7th, I haven't heard of women or children being blamed for any of these really devastating 1,139 deaths from October 7th. Those killings. But this isn't eye for an eye. This isn't revenge. Revenge doesn't have high precision weapons targeting children and women. Doesn't have tanks shooting shells into a building where they know that women and children are located. This is genocide. They're not going to look at civilians in the way that would make them stop. That could make them stop. They're so far detached in their right-wing ideology and their insane reward and resources they acquire whenever they annex another part of the strip. See them dancing for this. This is what they're doing. They know what's next to be done. They want Gaza to be gone. And then they'll be pushed to the sea. But a blight is cast upon Gaza after weeks of pumping salty seawater into the tunnels. That salty seawater is going to spread and cause untold ecological damage all throughout the soil, water tables, everything. It's just massively filling up these tunnels with salt water, seawater. Not even thinking about the implications of doing these very alarming actions, just without mercy. Because this isn't harming just Palestinians, this isn't harming just the current land that is by. Water moves fast, especially when it's warm. That the land that they annex might be salted earth. I push play here. It's absolutely ripped apart. There's so much more bare ground. You see these treads here. There are just so many numerous tracks, trails. It's a whole ground operation, but you have high precision satellite information of Gaza. You have untold amounts of soldiers that are doing reconnaissance, that are listening, eavesdropping, wiretapping, just looking at everything with cameras. It's one of the most surveilled places on Earth. And to think that high-level crimes are still committed out of the country is really intense thought. That you're blockade, that you're blocked in, that you work out of Gaza. That's the other thing too. There's tens of thousands of people that are separated between Israel from the West Bank, the Gaza Strip. Tens of thousands of people that worked but lived in Gaza Strip that they haven't been able to go back, so they're already refugees where they stand. There's thousands of people that are in the West Bank that have been trapped, also need aid. North Gaza's run out of aid. UNRWA said that there has been no deliveries since January 23rd, was it? It's too dangerous, and plus every time that they seem to get a time together for feeding people, it comes under Israeli fire. And these are just objective facts that are just pouring out of Gaza every day. While we have over 1 million people at risk to die, that completely preventable deaths, over 1 million preventable deaths, if Israel would just cease fire instead of using starvation as a weapon, making people desperate that they go out and risk sniper fire. People that risk their lives and everything that they have just to try to find another day's worth of food there is no leftist colonist settler. There just isn't. It's violence, it's theft, it violates international law, which the Pompey Doctrine just recently revoked. Israel finds a lot of their new settlements in violation of international law again. there's no undo button, so Rafah is the last straw for many people. The siege of so many hospitals, I believe, was the tipping point. And it happened pretty immediately that hospitals were huge focuses of much Israeli defense. This is brutal what we're seeing here. I can go in color so it's not false color, but easier to see. Either way, it's alarming. Play. This is December 1st, 2023 up here. And this is February 4th, 2024. Like, gone. This is East Khan Yunis. Wiped out, annihilated. Just eviscerated. Humiliated. Evacuations have been a joke. There's been no concern over civilian loss and civilian lives. As it is a genocide, we don't expect Israel to ever look at Palestinian lives the same way as anything else. They're not going to find that this is wrong, that what they're doing is wrong, even though that there are numerous huge protests that are taking place in Tel Aviv, protesters being arrested, their freedoms being squelched. Even people in Israel are being punished for voicing their opinion on the war. Because Rafah was a population of 275,000. Now, over 1.5 million people. There's no food, water, no hygiene. There's nothing. There's surviving, but on nothing. With only the threat of being bombed or shot at every turn. While you literally, I would be too afraid to leave. I think that there's children going out there that are trying to be careful not to literally just get shot because their country is in a war zone, a war that they didn't choose as children. The 12,300 children that have been killed in this war so far, they had nothing to do with Hamas. The poisoned way of thinking is that when they grow up, they're martyrs, their parents were martyrs, so they're going to be martyrs themselves because chances are their parents are going to be killed or they'll be separated from their family. And then they have to be a child without family, without anyone. Playing in the rubble, playing in the gutted remains of their cities. The Israeli army presented evacuation plan to War Cabinet, Prime Minister's office. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has issued a statement on three plans the Israeli army has presented to the Israeli War Cabinet. The statement refers to plan for evacuating the population from the areas of fighting in the Gaza Strip, the upcoming operational plan. The brief statement does not specifically mention if either of these first two plans relate to Israel's intended Rafah ground invasion. It also does not mention if or how the War Cabinet responded. The statement separately says that the War Cabinet approved a plan for providing humanitarian assistance to the Gaza Strip. It would be easy that they just let the humanitarian assistance go through. That would be the first step. It goes on to say that the plan would be carried out in a manner that will prevent the looting that has occurred in the northern strip, but does not mention other reasons why aid has not been reaching the north. Too dangerous and people are being killed trying to get food. And you see this in a lot of horror movies. You're on a vessel that's out on sea, no food, but this isn't just food trying to get to these people, but the trucks aren't allowed to get through. They're being stopped at checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint. The amount of holding up will spoil anything. Plus also with everything that we know that it comes with food that's freeze-dried, frozen, or flour, it needs water, it needs clean water to be able to make it. And nobody has access to clean drinking water in Gaza. Children's play in ruins of Rafah Mosque. Children will still play. See the tops of the burnt peaks. Walking with a jerry can in front of the old mosque that was completely destroyed and leveled to the ground to its foundation. Sounds like spiders crawling all over the place when I'm typing. I'm sorry. It's type like 180 to 200 words per minute. Just posting this link in certain places. Let's come back over here. So, what could possibly be the evacuation plan that they're planning on? Can't be Rafah. There's nowhere to go if they evacuate Rafah, you understand? There is nowhere else. Look at this. Look at this. You're not going to be able to send people on foot all the way back up to North Gaza. Can't hear. Not here. Not here. Not here. Not here. Not here. Okay. If not any of these places here in the Gaza Strip, where else is this going to go? Well, Here is circle is Khan Yunis, and that is currently being evacuated as we've seen them, Israeli soldiers sieging hospitals nonstop, destroying huge portions of the hospital, making it difficult to try to treat patients, as well as Israel going into the hospitals and arresting dozens of doctors and nurses and medical staff, people that are there that help the hospital function. You take away its function, you take away the people, and you're just left with people that are sick and dying instead of being able to be treated. But this is a genocide. When you try to bring in emotion, when you try to bring in facts, when you try to explain that how many violations, how many war crimes are being committed by their own neighbor, it's a horror story, and it hasn't had an end in decades. It's a deteriorating and smaller Gaza. As of right now, you see here. All right, well, look at this. I'm gonna take that circle away. Okay, now here's Rafah right here. South Gaza, southern Gaza. This is Rafah right here. Where? You're not going to be able to, because what Israel is doing, as we've been looking at, they have sliced through right here into Gaza. And these are going to be new roads, new pavements. So they're going to evacuate Khan Yunis to wherever else, and they're going to evacuate Rafah to nowhere. Their intention is not to evacuate people. Their intention is for as many Palestinian people to die as possible. It's been too long. It's been too long, and I've had too many people in my life that have what you support people in Palestine. No, I support civilians not be getting massacred non-stop while our country turns a blind eye to it. It took this assault on Rafah, and it took 30,000 Palestinian deaths. The world to wake up. Israel has a right to defend itself, but according to international law, they might have stepped a little bit too far, because with people being sanctioned for having to do with anything with the settler movements and recolonizing, there's a lot of terrible things that are yet to come. This is Rafah down here. Population of 275,000 people turned to 1.5 million people in a few short weeks. And push play. The Hamas isn't something that's voted in. And the other question that hasn't really been answered is, what makes up Hamas? Is it only Palestinians? Are only Palestinians Hamas? Are only Lebanese people Houthis? Houthis? Houthis. broadly label without evidence an entire people being terrorists. It makes it a lot easier to mow them down, because it's just precisely what we're seeing is slaughter of civilian life. It doesn't matter if they're in the Gaza Strip, and that Israel, by their own actions, have made life so insufferable in the Gaza Strip. Israel, at any point, could have made life a little bit easier by allowing Palestinians to have funerals, not interrupting their funerals, not knocking the casket off people's shoulders, allowing people to relatively even be free. And coupled with its theft of land and culture, most Israeli food is just renamed Palestinian food. It's a lot of death. And just that somebody is born in the Gaza Strip doesn't make them terrorists. Just because they're a child in the Gaza Strip doesn't mean they deserve to die. It's when you start getting into the territory of Israel has a right to defend itself, that Israel has a right to defend itself on so many fronts. But again, to what end? How many children will be arrested and killed? Or killed, sorry, not arrested and killed, arrested or killed. With tens of thousands of people being hurt, injured, wounded. A lot of those being children too. 70%. 12,300 children. 8,300 women have been killed so far in the war on Hamas, between Hamas and Israel. Israel is not going to consider civilian lives. They already made this decision a year ago when Netanyahu showed that graphic with Gaza Strip completely gone. It's what else could there be possibly to say? They want to wipe out Gaza as quickly as possible, but they're not thinking about the long-term factors that play into using such precision munitions and weapons and salting the earth as much as they are. That you want to recolonize these areas with Israeli Zionist people. Okay, well, you just made this landscape a living hell. It's not going to recover from the salt that's been pumped in, the seawater that's been pumped into the tunnels. It's only going to increase the decay and deterioration of around the Gaza Strip. All these actions are IDF and their right to defend themselves. But let's look at it on in a settler mindset. Are you going to be able to live a normal life in an area that's been bombarded by weapons of different kinds over weeks, and then having the ground completely salted with seawater? Good luck. It's not going to be healthy, and it's going to cause a lot of contamination in the water tables underneath, and the soil absorbing it all, make ground crack. As we're seeing it here, is the complete and utter destruction of and around Han Yunis. I thank you for watching, for listening. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. It helps me out immensely. As of right now, there's areas and regions of Han Yunis outstretching the borders, not loading. I apologize, this might take a moment. There it goes. So this little city southeast of Han Yunis. You can just see how quickly, the closer you are to the border, the more likely you're going to experience annihilation. $30,001 Palestinians. This evacuation plan is going to come out of this soon. They've already been evacuating Khan Yunis. They're not evacuating Rafah. There's been no leaflets dropped, no loudspeakers, drones flying around telling people to get out. Nothing like that yet. But you have people that came to Rafah with nothing on their backs, nothing in their bellies, and they're going to make them all leave again. Israel is trying to create the largest crowd crush in human history by pushing hundreds of thousands of people in different directions for different purposes, but all desperate. Hmm. 70% of those 30,000 have been women and children. What crimes have they committed? You don't control where you're born. These children never had a chance. Because with the mindset that they're only going to turn into martyrs because we're certain that their parents are going to be killed. Certain that their parents are going to be killed and these are going to be turned into martyrs. Why so certain that the parents would die, leaving behind children? Why so certain the population will be separated from their families? Just a huge upheaval of people all around the place with no communication, no internet, no cell phone, no way of checking on each other. So you're miles away from somebody you know. You don't know what is going on. So it's living in the dark on top of just living outside. It's the society being peeled back as we can see it. it real quick. Maybe the speed might be another factor. It's insanity. It's systematic. It's precision. Nothing's accidental. You're not seeing bombs dropped and accidentally fall into Israel's side. I'm not seeing any of that. Just seeing a lot of harm being done to Palestinians. Has always been the case. And I thank you for watching. Currently looking at Khan Yunis. This is annihilation, genocide, it is a massacre. It is people being targeted ethnically. It is pulverizing, I believe. Pulverizing the way to describe the landscape that we're seeing right here. Not immediately clear until by the end of December, when you see the deterioration and the flattening of Gaza and Khan Yunis. As this, you would hear, this is December 1st, this image. I'm sorry, I'm just not noticing that my... Yeah. Supposed to be able to see the data, I'm sorry. And bird flu is global. Bird flu is found in Antarctica, is found in penguins. This is what I've been saying for weeks. Pretty alarming to start hearing about it on the news after weeks of saying that, hey, bird flu is found in polar bears and penguins all over the place. So that's the 1st December. Complete annihilation. Go from this to this. 2 months. Bombing campaigns, warfare, tanks, shelling, destroying the buildings and residences and infrastructure, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, daycares, it's, you name it. It is terror to live in Gaza. It is Everything is uncertainty. Your next meal, next anything. You never know. There's the stories that are true about this evacuation plan that's possibly coming up against Rafah. It would be a horrific humanitarian disaster and calamity to think that over 1 million people that have nothing, that have walked with nothing, they have to walk again in another direction. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go in Han Yunis. You can't evacuate from Rafah to Han Yunis, and Egypt's not going to open their border. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of refugees. But have we ever seen how far 1 million refugees can get if they all try to climb over the Egyptian border fence altogether? We might see it. It is alarming, the amount of desecration to structures, buildings, and cemeteries that have been happening. There is no longer ground justification for what's happening with Rafah, with looming Rafah. It's a terrible ordeal that's befalling on the people. Guilty by association and punish collective punishment. So many ways of humiliation and war that are being waged on these people that do not have anything to do with what's going on. $30,000 dead Palestinians, 70% of them have been women or children. Because the women, they allowed to even serve in Hamas? What are they even allowed to do? The violence has been so crippling against women and children, and only 30% of those killed in Gaza, men of serving Hamas age, you could say. At what percentage of those people killed are actual Hamas? It's, let's say, 98% of everyone that Israel has killed so far in this war has been innocent, has been a civilian. This reckless murder, paving roads over genocide as quickly as the tanks leave. This is southern Gaza over Han Yunis, where people are being told to evacuate, where hospitals are being sieged upon, and ammunition is spent on those without a weapon to fight back. 70% of the 30,000 killed women and children. What were the children's crimes? Being born is not a crime. We do not have that luxury of saying that is asinine. Being a child doesn't make you guilty and doesn't make it okay for collective punishment to include the children, to include the tens of thousands of orphan children that no longer have a family after the events over the last few months. It's hideous and barbaric. And even if a soldier in Israel declines service, they'll face swift punishment of up to 20 months in prison, even if they've served already. A woman was in prison today for 20 months in Israel for refusing to go to war in Gaza. And you know what happens? If she was only sentenced to 2 months and got out, she would be put right back, okay, you're going to Gaza. Just as she was put in jail for refusing her orders once doesn't mean the next time she's free, not free, but when she comes out of prison, she's going to have the same choice again. She's not going to have a choice. They're not going to have a choice. A woman that went to jail for violating her order to not go to Gaza, they want to make an example out of her. They're afraid of who follows. Because the way that serving in Israel until you're I believe, age of 40, you're serving until mandatory service. So you see a lot of the Israeli soldiers, their outfits don't fit, and they look strange all the time. Why? Because they're just rotating them out constantly. But with these conditions, you're going to have people that are new brought to the front line. This is hell, and you just kind of put people in it. We're winning this war. It doesn't sound like we're winning the war from the people on the streets. It sounded like you're mopping up a lot of civilian lives. It's hideous, the kind of barbaric language that we're hearing from all sides. But only one is committing genocide. Only one turned off water. Only one is preventing food and aid to get through. If it's not dropped in by a plane, chances are it's not getting through and it's going to be spoiled. You have too much aid on trucks that's baking in the sun, waiting after checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint. And yes, the checkpoints are created just out of thin air. It's not like okay, checkpoint here, that's 3 hours, it's 4 hours, that's 2 days. What's the point? If people believe that aid will get through, which it hasn't in days in the north. North's really bad with UNRWA not able to supply services anymore up in the north. So people are going to starve because they have nothing. And it's not like people haven't been starving already before. This is another level of starvation. This is famine. This is mass famine. This is babies dying, children, toddlers dying, because young people, developing bodies, they can't live on just anything like adults can. An adult can survive on some pretty horrible stuff for a long period of time, as my own experiences have shown me. But being a kid, you're susceptible to so many communicable diseases that eventually is going to catch up on you. These kids are going to be malformed, they're going to have diseases that's going to cause blindness and other problems because they're drinking salty seawater sewage mixed with rainwater. That's their life. They're standing in it, they're wading in it, they're drinking it. There's no other way to get water. They find pipes that have been broken into or dug up, and even that water is not okay to drink. And there's no way to boil the water, because anytime that there is boiling, it's usually for food, mass feedings that usually end in gunfire. That's the difference, in the United States and Israel. When there is a block party, you could say, and you hear gunfire. It is block fire. What is going on here? Why would they shoot at people getting food? It's food. Why would anybody shoot at another person getting food? If that's the idea, like it's too much. It's too much animation. It's too much people. It's too much having a good time. There's little to no reason to fire upon the aid trucks, to fire on the people that are giving out the aid. Location of right here on the east side, on Eunice. You can see tank treads, you can see bulldozer treads. It is evisceration. This is not going to end. This is an endless war, a cycle of violence. And if it were to end, why would they need an Iron Dome any longer? It's going to be locked in this eternal struggle of needing ammunition for the Iron Dome. It'll be very expensive, in billions of dollars. With the impending ground invasion of Rafah, they're still bombing it. They're still softening targets. Can you see? This is going to be a very important region for the IDF. This is going to be a road they use, go around southern Gaza to central Gaza, or Gaza Center. I thank you for your attention, for watching. I'll call the stream here. I start stream today due to news of over 30,000 Palestinian deaths, with at least 1 million more that are all preventable. But we're not going to see action. We're not going to see any kind of reform or any kind of humanitarian aid when it comes to Gaza. We just see violence, gunfire, massacres. Jewish people around the world are adding their voices to calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. In New York City, home to the largest population of Jewish people globally outside of Israel, demonstrations demanding a halt to the bombardment of the besieged enclave has intensified in recent months. War on Israeli War Cabinet's humanitarian assistance plan. As reported earlier, the Israeli War Cabinet has approved an Israeli army plan for providing humanitarian assistance in the Gaza Strip. According to a brief statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office, Netanyahu, the plan is reportedly designed to prevent the looting that has occurred in the northern strip and other areas. However, the UN humanitarian organization OSHA has said that people in Rafah are so desperate they are eating food immediately after taking it from trucks. Rafah has been the only entry point for aid trucks into the Gaza Strip, but UNRWA says fewer than 35 trucks entered the besieged enclave on average per day last week. Aid convoys have struggled to move through Rafah to reach other areas after Israeli forces targeted and killed Palestinian police who were trying to help aid convoys navigate hungry and desperate crowds. This is genocide. Go for the numbers. At least 30,001 Palestinians killed and about 1,139 people killed in Israel since October 7th. 12,300 children, 8,400 women killed. Injured, more than 69,737. Missing, more than 7,000. And you ask yourself, what is Israel doing when it comes to the remains? Are they going through rubble? Are they looking through rubble at all to look for survivors, to look for remains? I don't believe so. So that 7,000 that's missing, either there's people that are lost and they're not able to contact each other because there's no cell phone coverage, there's no email, none of that. Occupied West Bank. At least 395 people, including more than 105 children, injured. More than 4,450. Now, West Bank is a very peculiar situation because you have tens of thousands of people that live in Gaza, that work in Israel or Gaza, the West Bank, that are being forced to stay because they're not allowed to cross. So they're not allowed to go home. So they don't know what's going on with their families as much as their families know what's going on with them. It is an absence of information and intel when it comes to civilians. There is no place safe to go. thank you again for watching. Please, if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe. I go live very frequently. I do not have a set schedule. I've been trying to have a set schedule, but when I have something that I can talk about for a period of time but when all I want to talk about is Gaza, it's a really niche area, I guess. At least it was. It's terrible. Alright. Thank you for watching. Have a good week.